think like what you talked about with the politician guy, freedom guy.
Morgan.
It's like the reality is people are selfish. We all are at some stage. And then we all go into this thing of like we identify with the thing rather than I have my own identity and let's look at this objectively. So we have a tendency to go, okay, this is now my identity. Absolutely. So if you're like, I vote Labor, so you're a Labor person. Yeah, through and through. We'll never vote any other way. Well, hang on.
Yeah.
What if the Labor does what it's done in the last 10 years where it's not just now talking about workers' rights. They're more into a whole heap of social issues that they're grey areas. It's like, do you still support that?
It's terrible that you can't compartmentalize. Like I think one of the biggest issues at the moment is that with this current US election is that there's like, you know, you agree to say 7 out of 10 of the things, but especially I find, I probably don't want to say too much, but like I find on some of the sides there's just that almost cult-like agreement that we just agree.
Yeah.
And if you go against that, if you say that, hey, I don't really agree with that particular part, well then you're just out. Yeah. And it's just you just destroyed. And I think that's what politics has become. Hopefully things get better, things change, but you know, both sides, the funny thing is if I was to say something like, you know, they completely lie, they fabricate, they don't tell the truth, they say that they accuse us of doing what they're doing. I could be on either party,
exactly,
because both teams think that of the other side.
Well, I had a mate that was, like, absolutely everything was getting posted in the last election for America because he lives over there. And it was all the opposite, obviously. He's Trump boy. And it was just interesting because I go, yep, you're pointing out these issues, but then he would put stuff up and I'd do a simple 30-second Google check and find that it's not actually what they're saying.
Yeah.
It wasn't actually.
Or it's taken out of context, and I go, or it's not right.
And now you're doing exactly what you're accusing them of doing.
Exactly.
Because you're just jumping straight in the pool without even checking what the depth is, and that bugs me because I go, now I can't even listen to what you put up because I found that what you put up isn't – it used to be you're putting up accurate facts that you're finding. Now you're just putting up anything that vilifies the other person.
And the problem with politics, and it's the same with when you would understand this when you own a business, is that you can't always explain the whole gun that's to your head, if you know what I mean. Like I might make a move for the business. They have to just trust that, you know, and people just have to trust that there's pressures at bay, and that's where the trust in the party comes. We go, okay, we believe in X politician and we trust that he's got our best interests at heart. So if he does something, even if it doesn't look quite right, then we trust that he must know more than we do, you know, and that's kind of where you get to with this stuff because there's so many little things going on. And anyway, welcome.
Thank you, sir. Yeah. It's like, I've told myself, do not rant.
This is a place to rant, man.
Yeah.
So tell us a bit about yourself. Obviously, there's a few factors. We'll start with business, right? I want to know about the business because I know you did your labour hire business and you've been successful with that.
Yes.
And I think that's probably, you know, interesting to a certain degree. But I wanted to get you to sort of discuss the new sort of project that you're working on, and I guess you know, you can tell us as much about that as you feel, or how it's evolved or whatever. If there's a starting point with all that, go for it, you know?
Yeah, okay. I suppose if we go back in business, I'd worked for a guy Dan that you met on Bull Rush. That was good. Basically, I worked for him for, I think it was around about 14 years or 17 years, one of the two, in labour hire. Long story short, felt like our season was done. The kids were getting to an age, you know, in our Western culture, usually most men, if we'll say men, get to that age of their late 30s, early 40s, which is when they're most experienced in their work genre that they're in, and they're starting to make promotion levels. They're starting to either look at starting their own business, and that side of it usually coincides with when their sons and daughters are hitting that teenage years, when actually fathers have a great influence on their kids, but they're absent because of work.
Right.
And we just came into a season that was coming up, and we decided our time in labour hire was finished. I'd said to Dan, mate, I think it's time to pull up stumps, and we were looking at other avenues to make sure I was a bit more at home. A few things had changed in the industry, and it was about to be I'd have to be on the road again 3 to 4 nights a week. Figured better off having less money, but that season with the kids, because you can't get that back, but you can always make more money. I made that decision. We were out for probably close to 2 years, and I started a coaching business because my father was the second guy to bring disc behavioural understanding into Australia under People Keys. So I'd grown up on that, like 20 plus years of exposure to it and sitting through seminars and helping people with all that side of it. So I thought, I love that. I love people. Have a background in that area of a lot of not-for-profit work, I suppose, in that regard, and was like, this is the alignment. This will be the time. Went out and did that and was really successful. Grew that to like $21,000 turnover, I think, in 1 year. Wow. Living with Jenny's parents, nice. living the dream, with a couple of kids, and just it was great. And then my old boss basically was getting done with it and said, I want out.
So how long were you away from Dan for? 2 years?
Just under 2 years.
Right.
And he
but you still were obviously in contact.
Oh, we were still friends. So so that's another whole story.
But he was mates.
Yeah, he's one of my best mates growing up. We probably worked together. We had a unique relationship everyone talks about, and even with some of the people you would have spoken to. And we were like, afterwards though, after the business, if we say outside of that world, our friendship was a lot better because there wasn't a give-take thing. And so when he was looking at getting out, I was helping him try and sell it. I spoke to a good mate of mine that was in the industry that had contacts everywhere, and I was just like, this is the price. This is what he's selling. The guy doing my role since I left, great guy, but just doesn't have the influence or the connections that I had. Yeah. You'll kill the pig. It's doing way better than Dan's letting, because he's used to it being up here. It's still a great functioning business that's making good profit. And my mate that I was selling it to said, this is a good deal. Yeah. How come you're not?
Yeah, if it's so good, why don't you take it?
Yeah, it had never crossed my mind. Went back to Dan. He basically said, I thought you were done. I said, I am if you're still there. I said, I talked with a fair few groups that have been chasing me, good companies that I have a lot of affinity with in the similar genre, but just couldn't get a piece or a yes, because I felt like I built the other brand, and to go to someone else would be like, not doing well in that regard.
Sure.
Out of loyalty. And I said, but if you're done, I wouldn't mind having a dig. And he just said, well, if you want in, you looked after me when I went through my crap, because he'd been through some pretty heavy business experiences with bankruptcy and different stuff. And I stayed loyal, and we grew back out of that with him. And he said, well, I'll halve the sell price. We'll do a vendor finance in with no risk. So if it doesn't make certain amount by end of June first year. Yeah. And we were just blessed. As soon as my feet were under the desk, that started exploding. Yeah. Out of that though, we got to a point, I had a lady working for me, Andrea, great lady, and she was with us for a season in the labour stuff. But one of the things she embedded in me when I was talking about, we just dig holes. That's all we're doing in mining, we're just digging holes. She was like, what if you could dig holes and save lives? Which is in that heartbeat of helping people understand each other, communicate, do all that side of it. And that sort of was the pivotal kick to go, hang on, I can use what we've got financially coming in from the labour stuff to start looking into ways that I could feed back into community, find, I suppose, answers for like what you're talking about, communication and enhancing that in the household, helping marriages be stronger, relationship with fathers, mothers, that sort of stuff. So we started down that track, and a very long, protracted story into a small thing. When we moved to Brisbane, connected with a good mate of mine here, Kewan, he owns Q1 business, I suppose. They do a heap of tech builds and that sort of stuff. Got him into doing disc because I was saying I wanted something to present better than what we had. So normally I go in, we sit with the top tier of any company where you've got, say, 3% or 2% of the actual workforce, but you're in a room like this with 12, 14 people. You change their world because you explain to them people are different, but they're predictably different. You give them keys to understand how to allocate tasks, stress management, conflict resolution, team building, all this sort of stuff. And in that moment, he was like a bit skeptical. Did a profile for him and his wife, and it shifted their whole relationship. Being able to being able to actually present to them, he did the profile for him and his wife. He was very skeptical that anything could be that helpful. And they're usually we're attracted to someone that's opposite us, which is cute at the start, but becomes a frustration if you don't have understanding later on, because you get, why aren't they like me? So him and his wife had over the years a few challenges in their relationship, and after he'd done the profiles and understood a bit more about it, he was like, they had a bit of a set to, and how he would normally approach that would mean they'd be in an interesting scenario for 3 or 4 days.
Yeah, right.
He went back over the thing, took heed to what it said as to how to approach it, and changed the way he approached it that afternoon. And he said it was like immediately it just shifted our whole relationship. And that was when he was like, I've got to get into this. And my focus when I was introducing him to it was, instead of leaving my clients with a 40-page booklet on themselves that no one ever read. Well, a small percentage does, the high C personality. They love digging in. But most people don't read it. So I would do a 1-page summary of each person in their team, do up a handbook for their team. So you could look up Sean, her, whatever, and just go, and it'd have do's, don'ts in communication, what motivates them, what takes their energy away, that sort of stuff. And I said to him, I just want that in their hand. Once he did the profile himself with his experience in building applications and that sort of stuff, he was like, if we've got all the things you do off the back of that. So I would usually do that first seminar, but then once I know everyone, I can go back and speak to them on stress management. I can go and speak to them on team building or all the usual stuff.
I think I need to jump in. So, so just cut back, right? So I get that we've got this sort of product. So what's it called? DISC?
Yeah, so it's been around for a very long time.
DISC?
So DISC, behavioural understanding. So it's basically personality profiling.
Right.
It's not a psychological tool, and there's a lot of things that play into it.
And your dad?
He was the second guy to bring it into Australia.
And it's called just DISC. What does DISC stand for?
So you got, D is for your dominant, direct, task-orientated. Everything's about the win. I is your talkative, intuitive. Everything's about people. S is your steady, secure, slow-moving, and people-orientated as well. And then C is basically the other extreme of the D. They're still task-orientated, but they're detail.
Oh, that's why you said the C people, right?
Yes.
So, okay, so this is invented by someone or?
Oh, yeah, it goes back. It goes right back if you go into it. It's not a new thought pattern. If you go right back to Socrates and that sort of stuff, they talked about some people have fast-flowing red lava, some people have slow-flowing cold.
Gotcha.
So it was always in the back there. Other people know of it, like you had your choleric, your melancholy, your sanguine, and your phlegmatic.
Right.
However,
so these are sort of like personality traits.
Just ways to identify people.
And then, so your dad sort of had some experience with it. You guys were running it as a business, or was he?
Dad had a small business, but he was full-time as a pastor as well, head of a church. So it was sort of in the background that he was in, I suppose, 2 places, a marketplace and in the church setting.
Yeah. And you grew up with that around you, so you had an affinity for it, and then you've done your labour hire business, and then that's going well, and you've decided to go back to using this as a way in the last sort of, I guess, however long.
Probably 5 years.
5 years you've gone back to saying, well, whilst I'm running this business, I can also now, using this opportunity, I'm dealing with a lot of people.
Yes.
I can help people, because that's obviously part of your purpose, I guess, is to want to help others. And I guess there's that business side as well, that you have a product that actually people can benefit from. So you've then gone and developed this, and it's now in an app format where you can go out and speak to businesses.
Yes.
And people can interact with it and get themselves a profile, and also profiles of the people they work around.
Yes.
Okay, I got it.
Good summary.
Yeah. No, I kind of felt like I just didn't quite have my head around it. So how does that work? Do you sort of just approach a business and say, look, we want to come in and what would be the sell there? Is it efficiency? Is it harmony within the?
I think it's an interesting one. PricewaterhouseCoopers did a study, I think it was 2019, so pre-COVID, an Australian study on the cost of business of like stress, conflict in workplaces, all these different things. Their study highlighted that most people leave a job not for more money, not for a different opportunity, but because they don't get on with the person above them or beside them. And so conflict resolution and understanding people is huge. So the ROI that they talk about in white collar work if you just go in and do a one-off, what I used to do, a one-off engagement face-to-face with a group of people, their ROI in white collar is about $3 for every dollar you spend. What they found in the blue collar world, which is in the mining industry, construction, that side of it, when you present something along those lines on stress management, mental health, that sort of stuff, it's between $7 and $8 for every dollar that they invest. That's what it returns back to them in the long term. And I was like, that's pretty cool in itself. Add to that, that's on an antiquated one-off engagement paper base that once you've finished, you walk out, it's hard to find the information again. Putting it in someone's hand 24/7, where they have a crap day at work with Sean and they're pissed off with him and they're angry and he's riding my ass and whatever. Most people, if you look at the breakdown of behavioural styles as a percentage-wise worldwide, you see in your essay your least wanting of conflict, but they make up over 80% of your population and your workforce. So if you look at that speaks into why people, they will leave when they got conflict above or beside, because they don't want the conflict. So instead of confronting it and dealing with it and working through it, they feel like, oh, I'll just avoid that. I'll start looking for another job. I'll avoid tasks with that person. So it's like putting it in their hand. They're the ones that go home, open their app, look up Sean and go, that's why he does that. When I'm presenting that information to him, he needs it in bullet point, not a booklet that's 20 pages long. He needs 1-page summary with the bullet point. It's like, so giving them that understanding, basically increasing their EQ without having to go through the potential hard yards. And by nature.
It's a bit of a shortcut, a bit of a hack.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. It's one of those ones. So for businesses in that side of it, especially in a world where at the moment there's almost like a shortage of workers, when you get a decent worker into your workforce, you can't afford to lose them because they don't get on with someone.
Oh, man.
We can't afford to promote someone as we've been doing of late because of the lack of people. We're promoting people probably a decade earlier than what we would have in the past. So there's a decade less life skills that they have, and we throw them into a leadership role before they're ready, and now they're trying to manage people, understand people, find what works. And by nature, most people will come back to, how do I want to be managed? That's how I'll manage everyone. Which, the old age, do unto others as you want them done unto you. Yeah. It's true, but it's not accurate. It's actually do to Sean how Sean would like done, and hope that he does to Ryan how Ryan would like done. So communicating that sort of stuff.
Yeah. And so why do you find there's that discrepancy between blue collar and white collar?
To be honest, I don't know the science behind it. My we say assumption, that's dangerous because it can make an ass out of me and you. But I think from what I see is it's just like most blue collar settings are set up on the trade.
Yeah.
So you're working in the trade is what you're learning. You're working in that side of it. You're not sitting in an office where you're face to face with people all day and maybe getting training. Like normally an office gets training on decorum, training on you can't talk to someone like that. You got to so they're exposed to that.
Or even I guess it's just the environment. You just learn because you're around others. It's a bit more of a social environment. You go to lunch together and not that you don't go to lunch together when you're a tradie, but you're also dealing generally with, I guess, it's just a different, it's a less harsh environment for pretty much.
Yeah. And if you look at, say, construction and you look at mining, construction in Australia is your highest for suicide and depression.
Wow.
So it's like there's a breakdown in that regard. And if we look at it, I mean, mining's changed a lot in the last 15 years to diversification as far as like bringing females into certain roles and what have you. However, historically, it's men. One thing that we haven't been good at since World War II, when a heap of men came back emotionally broken and unable to share, is we now have 5-6 generations of men that have never been taught how to actually engage, deal with stuff, communicate well.
Express,
communicate with their wife, their kids, whatever. So it's like that plays out, I believe, in our workspaces where there's predominantly men in the past. When you bring something to light that they've never seen before in their life, that's simple, it's easy, and they start to go, you mean my wife isn't doing that on purpose to piss me off? They've just never experienced that before.
Yeah, right.
And there's so many factors in Australia, like marriage, divorce, hit 50% in 1995.
Oh, well, for sure.
So we're now four generations basically since 95 into potentially people that have never, ever seen their grandparents, their parents, or their great-grandparents show a functioning relationship that makes it through hard times. And so then that all bases into communication skills, into EQ, all that sort of stuff.
Explain that a bit more. So you're saying, is that based off the back of, where do you get that from, the 4 generations?
Well, 1995.
Right.
If that was when 50% of marriages started,
Right.
you look at the age group then, they're getting into relationships, coming through those kids, then they potentially may not have it work out. And it's like that nearly, whatever it is, 30 years.
Yeah.
It's like, that's interesting. So there's the recurring setup, not saying that it's any particular person in that thing's fault, but it's a reality that if you're not seeing something modeled, you don't know.
True.
And same as what we talked about, what got me sold on doing the simplest thing within DISC was when I was probably 19 or 20 and sat in, and Dad was doing a profile on a married couple that they were done.
Yeah.
They're 30-something years in, they had it with each other. And to watch him go, they just do the profile, and this is the part I love, is I can literally look at the profile and go, Sean, by nature, these are the things that would agitate you about your wife that you don't understand.
And you go, yep.
And this is what she does. You do that because of this. She does that because of this. It's not actually she's trying to, but because they didn't understand that, it's me and my CFO.
Yeah.
I'm not detailed.
Yeah.
I'm not, it's like, so before we understand that about each other, I'm frustrated every time she wants to talk. Why does she want all this extra information? Why does she want, and she's like frustrated. Why won't you just give me the information? And he's like, once I understood that's actually how she's wired, that's actually really important to her.
Yeah.
Then out of a friendship and a relationship, I'm going to give her that because I
and
respect
vice versa.
her.
She might be more understanding when
exactly.
you don't.
She gives me a bit more leeway.
Yeah, that's right. Yes.
It helps that now I'm the boss. But it's like, it's like, it is one of those games. It's like a simple, I suppose the thing I always do is it's like, if, I don't know if the camera sees it, but if
it sees it,
if this is the problem that I've faced in my life, and this has been my background and upbringing and all that sort of stuff that's helped shape that, and that's how I dealt with it. So we got the issue, wisdom, understanding, and then the power to change. Most of the challenge that we find when we're dealing with people is Sean comes to me and he goes, oh, I've got this problem, and I jump over understanding and I go, this is how you fix it.
Yeah.
But I haven't actually taken the time to go, what's your understanding? Like, what got you to this point? Why does this issue actually impact you? Because the reason it's impacting you might be totally different to me, but I'm trying to give you the same solution when your solution might be something different. And I found that in relationships, that's usually what it is. When it comes to communication, we're sort of like, we haven't taken the time to understand the person.
Yeah.
And so we go, this is the answer. And it doesn't actually help them. It creates more frustration. And the cool part about it is people are different.
Yeah.
But they are predictably different.
Yeah.
And so once you've profiled someone, now not taking into account psychology stuff, different hurts and what have you, but I can tell you by your behavioral style, and people, it's cool. I love it because people always like, oh, you can't. Okay, whatever. But it's proven. You do your profile. I know what stresses you.
Yeah.
I know what you're going to do to avoid dealing with that stress. I know the results for you personally when you don't deal with it, and I know ways that I can offer you to help you deal with that stress better because I know your behavioral style. And each behavioral style is stressed by different things. So what stresses a high D personality doesn't even stress a high C. How a C deals with stress just frustrates a D.
Do you find that there's personality, is there any correlation between, say, genders or races, or like a women tend to be one type and guys tend to be another, or is there any sort of layout like that?
I think what set even DISC apart in the 70s when they brought it like into the current form that it's in was that they don't box you in like the older understanding where if you were a fast flowing red, that's what you were in every scenario. If you were a choleric, you were a choleric. That's it. DISC goes, you are all four, and there'll be dominant ones in certain environments. So at work, Sean could be decisive, direct, task orientated. Boom. At home, you become reserved, don't want to make a decision, just happy to go with whatever's going on.
Right.
It's like, so to say that that's how you are in a box is hard. So that I think helps though. Then when it comes to male, female, whatever, in what I've seen in the reports and what have you, It doesn't matter.
Right.
Personalities are personalities. We still have the thought pattern of like influences on that realm, like heretical. Yep, I think that's the right word. Yeah, hereditary, not heretical. Hereditary.
Right, yeah.
Cut and shuffle that one. Hereditary. So like there'd be things that you do that your parents talk about. Your great granddad was exactly like you. He laughed that way. You never met him, but that's what you do. Then the next one is our environment. So what we do is in that create those formative years and the early years where we're testing what works for us. So, what happens around our world. We test how to respond. So different behavioural profiles, I suppose, start to take form in that, and they can set. But what DISC really pushes on is your environment, because you could be the most, what you've been through, what we talked about before. You could be the confident in your space, go get a bang, 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 and one thing comes out of the blue and smacks you across the jaw, and now your whole behaviour in that scenario changes moving forward. You're more steady. You gather more information before you make that decision. So you shift in your behavioural style and personality. One phone call, dad's dead. Boom. Shifts your whole it's like so there's things that contribute, and the environment. You go to Bull Rush, how you were at Bull Rush in the first day might be totally different to how you are when you're hanging with your friends that you've known for 20 years. Because is so it's just wisdom that comes with that. So it doesn't box you in. That's what I like about it.
And so is this sort of like a proprietary, patented sort of thing?
This is the interesting thing about DISC. Unlike other, we'll say, profiling things, and there's many good tools out there. I always throw shade on certain ones, but I go, anything used is better than nothing.
Correct.
Because any exposure to something that helps
any
them
attempt,
understand.
I find an intention to fix yourself or help you. Like we went to David Goggins' conference the other day.
My son was there.
It was awesome. But, there was some bullshit in there. But, like any day that you're sitting there introspecting and trying to work out how you can be a better person, even if you're going, that's not the way to do it, but you're still taking the time out to do some reflection. And I think, like you say, any tool used or, anything that you're trying to do, intention is the key, I think, of everything. And, if you really want to, like a lot of the results, you get in life are also because you just want results.
Yep.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
So sometimes you go, without any tools, you might sit down with your wife and go, I want to fix this marriage. Like, what can we do? Like, let's have dinner twice a week together and palm the kids off to make sure we, that could be something that's a step in the right direction anyway. You know what I mean? So I agree with that. So it's not it's open source type of information.
It is an open source. That's why you'll see across the board, if you look up DISC, there's ones that represent them with different types of animals, and you're an eagle or a peacock or a whatever.
Right.
Some that sort of thing, and then you've got like DISC Plus and DISC Everything and DISC. So what's made that amazing is that it has actually become more accurate in the testing because it keeps getting refined. Whereas some of the others, they've like bang locked in, and there's one that I have a favorite one with because it's like, I won't say the name of it, but it's like, it's not to do with DISC. People use it all throughout the workforce and they go, this is amazing. And yet it's proven to be super inaccurate in its thing. And it's like, and everything that it tells you, DISC does.
Yeah.
If you know what you look, whereas it doesn't tell you. So I get very like, yeah, okay. But anything good. I don't want to discourage anyone using anything because most people, that's their biggest lack is they don't do anything to actually enhance how they do stuff. And in any other arena of our life, we would say that's stupid. But when it comes to relationships, for some reason, there's this, I don't know if it's just Australia, I don't know, we have this thing of like, I'll be all right, mate. There's nothing wrong because it's almost like an admittance of weakness or something like that in our world to go, hey, we should work on how we communicate. What are you trying to say? And it's like, well, flip.
In any other communicate area, aggressively.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. What's your problem? You better back the hell up, buddy. Yeah. And so it's like this game. It's like if we did it in any other scenario, we'd go, that's crazy. Like if I jumped on a motorbike right now and you put me on a motocross track, you would see a lot of reaction because I'm untrained. I've never really ridden a bike.
Yeah.
So it's like, you'd go, Ryan, are you right? You're going to put a helmet on? Nah, this is going to be awesome. I'm just going to hit that jump at full noise. It's going to be awesome. And we'd be like, you're crazy. You need to take time. Maybe just do a couple of track laps on the small, learn to jump. Where are you going to sit yourself on the bike? So that would be wise. And then we jump into any relationship, especially when it comes to, a spouse or something, someone special to us. And we go, hey, let's do some enhancing on communication. We go, no. That's
there's a book actually called like 20 questions you should ask your partner before you marry them or something like that. I think it's something like that. And I thought it's just so funny that the amount of guys I know or people I should say, because girls as well, have got married and they're 5 years in and they're having kids, and suddenly that's when it actually matters what you think about certain things. Because, I don't want my kid to be doing that, but I never knew you were against that, or, And you're like, you probably should have discussed this stuff. And it's so true. I think that, and I think measuring things I'm a bit of a nerd when it comes to measuring stuff. I'm a big fan of statistics, and to improve anything, you need to put a number on it. In fact, Mark Burris is working on this thing at the moment called Project 100, which is this longevity program. I won't bore you with it, but basically, it's what he's actually doing is making sure that you measure all the key statistics of your body. Yeah, wow. And so he's taking all the blood tests and all your levels on all the different stuff and then monitor them. And so that's part of the thing. And what he said was the same thing, that if you don't measure it, you can't improve it. So I know with me, for example, if I even with relationships, I haven't had to do it fortunately for a while, but there's been times in my life when, me and my wife will be fighting X amount of times a week. You go, okay, let's just try and make sure we can get through a week without an argument, And so in a way you're putting a stat on a number of arguments per week, And so you just go, let's just try and, and with kids, you want to do that as well, and discipline accordingly. So if your kid's doing really, really well at everything, and then, say my wife will call me up and say, my son has done something and blah, blah, blah. You're like, and you go, but if you're not actually measuring it, you go, well, hang on, this guy hasn't done a single thing wrong for 3 months. Yeah. How about we just listen, bro, come on, you've been doing well, but because you're in a reactive state, because you've had some shit go wrong in your life, or you're stuck in traffic or something, if you're not running off statistics, or, okay, make a real simple example is staff, is you might get upset with one of your staff members, but if you're not measuring their performance, you might blow up at them and realize later that, hang on, that was so unnecessary. They're actually doing fantastic. Yes. It's just a one-off, and I overreacted because of my stress. So it keeps you in line, And I think what you're saying here with DISC, I could see that, you're actually putting some you're making things that are intangible tangible because you're actually able to work on things that are generally just feelings.
Well, like what we talked about earlier, most people aren't aware that people are different to them, which is a problem in and of itself.
Yeah, or that they don't think the same way. Yeah.
Yes, they have no concept that people approach things differently to them, that they value different things in relationships, they value different things at work. So it's like if you're unaware of that, then you view people as though you're judging yourself. And it's a frustration. Why don't they do that? They must be doing that because I would only do that to someone if I hated them. Yeah. So it's like this. There's a flow of understanding that starts to happen, and I suppose like you're talking about that reaction. I'm a big advocate for if you've got training, you have less reactions, you have more responses, and a response is much better measured because I've actually thought about what could happen. And I've planned and I've trained to respond in that scenario. In any sport, you train. They train the last 5 seconds in basketball all the time. This is what we're going to do. Otherwise, you just see a heap of reactions, ball being thrown everywhere for no reason, no idea what's going on. Let's hope that we can sink a ball. Yeah, same goal, but it's a reaction. Yeah, it's a plan. If you've trained, we got 10 options.
And is it something you use with your family? Like, is it something you've your kids into it? Yeah. And because you're adult kids, haven't you?
Yeah. My boys are 24 and 20 now.
Yeah. So you had them when you were 15?
Yeah, we were. Well, I was 20. My wife was 10, and that way, she's still younger. No, but I'm a big advocate for it. Yeah. I blow out, and I see how my sons interact with their friends. Yeah, simply because that. They haven't even done the profiles on certain people, but because they're more aware
they're thinking
that people are different, they're trying to understand the person, not just go, gee whiz, that person drives me nuts.
Yeah.
They're like, why does that person drive me nuts? Like, what's the difference here? What are they thinking when they ask me that question? Instead of just going, right, I'm going to punch them.
Well, that's what I think most successful people take responsibility for communication, and they don't think it's just, they understand there's a formula to it. They understand that there's actually a process. And if you watch successful people, like I've been watching a lot of interviews lately and a lot of podcasts, and you see that, good acknowledgements, really key, good listening, good understanding, checking for understanding, and there's all these key sort of things that people do.
Yes.
It's not just a and they can be learned, I guess is what I'm saying. It's this, it's not just something that, oh, he's a great this or he's a great that. There's plenty of people out there that have just learned to apply these principles.
You got to want to.
Yeah,
I think that's like you said, it's that wanting to learn. Because it's there, the information's there. We're probably more exposed to it now with these things than ever before in our life. You can just type in anything you want now with AI, and it'll give you information. Again, if you don't believe that there is a difference or that everyone should just think like you, you're not going to look for that information.
Yeah, and it is. I imagine you've come across a lot of frustrating situations.
Yeah, I think this is where it comes to a point where once people have done a profile and you start to be. It's the other thing. If I don't know where my weakest point is, then that's where I'm going to fall every time. So the old paling buckets, this will age me very much. Young kids won't even know what we're talking about. Buckets used to be made up of individual pails, we'll call them, slots of wood. If the shortest, and they're held together by steel, if the shortest pail in a bucket this big is only this tall, that's as far as the water's going to get. So my leadership skills might be here, my financial advocate might be here, my ability to think outside the box might be here, but my people skills is here, then I'm only ever going to grow to that size because it can't go any higher.
Yeah, sure.
Because that pail is where it things. So if I don't know that about myself, how do I fix that? And that's one of the things that's, I suppose, somewhat potentially confronting in doing disc is it doesn't just tell you about, hey, these are the positives that Sean has, this is how to best communicate with him. It says, hey, this is how you act. This is what you do. And for people that can be somewhat challenging in that regard.
Is it always easier to sell it as like, hey, this is if we do this, you're going to be able to understand all the sort of other people without, and then sort of trick people into learning something about themselves.
Yeah, it's like the Trojan horse. I mean, the reality is, I know it's good for them, and if they can understand their spouse or their kids better or their parents, there's so much brokenness in that regard in places. If they can understand that better, then they then have a choice to go, okay, now I understand that when mum used to ride me on this, it's actually because she's this behavioural style. That's actually done in love. Yeah, it could have been better.
Yeah.
But that means now that I know that it was done in love, she had a poor communication style. Does that mean I have to forgive her? Does that mean I got to communicate with her differently? So it puts a bit of onus back on us as well.
Yeah, of course.
Some people are ready for that.
Yeah.
Some people are not.
Yeah.
Yeah, because if there's hurt.
Yeah, of course. Oh, well, that's always the case, isn't it? And I always say that, the funny thing about forgiveness is that it's for the people who don't deserve it,
Yes.
And no one wants to really understand that. It's like, that's the hard part about it.
Yes. Yeah, that's right.
How do you get it? Like, so what do people do? Do you just go to your website and
people can go to the website
and
and have a look into it? At the moment, it's geared more for big corporations, just because of the scalability and the costing of hosting all that sort of stuff. So it is probably in a small window for certain businesses of certain sizes, like we're talking like 1,000+ users or whatever.
Yeah.
The goal is to have it in schools and everything, but paid for by businesses.
Right.
That'll be the long goal.
We're
a little way off that.
Yeah. Yeah, well, keep us in the loop, I think it sounds like a great idea. And I think, as you said before about the phones, I mean, I don't know how your kids are probably just past it a little bit, but, it's definitely becoming more and more. I mean, I've got staff that face to face, they're just very quiet, and but over a text message, they'll send you reams and reams of information, and they're just the smiley faces and the lols and this and that. I'm like, you're not really laughing out loud.
Yeah, that's right. It is a different era. One of the things that we found, because it's all SMS automated as well, and that side of it, and then we've inbuilt because for the first time really, we know who the end user is, which means we can speak to that person in their language. So it's like now, if one of your staff ran downstairs and they could only speak Spanish, and she comes, I hope I get this right now, forgive me if you're Spanish, she comes in screaming at us, going, fuego, 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 and she's tears, desperate. We're like, what the heck is wrong with you? And she's grabbing our chest like, get off me. She's screaming fire. So her message is actually hugely important. Her intent is to help me and to save our lives. So it's an important message.
Yeah.
But because she can't speak my language, it gets lost. And I think that's the game in this sort of thing is like being able to put in someone's hand 24/7, the ability to go, my wife is speaking or I'm trying to get a message across to my son or my daughter who's just turning 18 and we've been at loggerheads the last whatever. As soon as there's an understanding, I go, I need to change how I deliver this message because each behavioral style has a different thing. So we've even recorded, we'll say TED Talks. They're not, we haven't stolen. We call them Concord Talks. But anyway, but they're just 5-minute bits. But we record them 6 or 7 different ways to speak to the end user. So once you've done your profile, we can talk about stress and I speak to you.
Right.
We can talk about enjoying work. The I's get enjoying work. The C gets achieving at work. The D gets winning at work. The S gets security at work because that's their drivers.
Right.
So it's like we all of a sudden know who is actually receiving it. And instead of doing when I go and do a mental health talk with a group of people or I go to a site and they're doing a safety reset and got to address 150 people and I have to broad form things on mental health or stress management or resilience and that sort of stuff. I have to broad form it with principles. I know who you are. So I can speak directly to you about, hey, this is what you need to do to build on resilience in your life. This is what you'll do to avoid. These are the things you're going to tell yourself.
So you actually alter the message to fit like
the behavioral style.
Yeah.
Because it's the same thing. Every behavioral style has different languages. So what? This is what I want you to do. To a D, yep, cool. To every other behavioral style, they shop on the inside. Because the S's and C's want to know how to do it. Being told what to do, they don't like. They don't like being told what to do. So if a D isn't aware of that, they come into their workforce where 80% of their workforce is made up of these people. This is what you need to do today. This is what I want you to do. Everyone's doing this at the table because they're compliant and they don't want the conflict. But on the inside, they're like, screw you, champ. All he has to do is change that one word to this is how I want you to do and fulfill this day. These are the steps, and they go, because they want to do it right.
Yeah.
That's their whole life thing is to do it right. Help me do this right. If he doesn't know that, he's like the lady running in screaming fire. In the wrong language.
Misses the point. Yeah. It's amazing stuff, man. I can see why you got interested in it.
Yeah, I love it. I'm probably a bit biased, obviously, but I've seen it work.
I think you've seen it work, and I think you've seen it in play, and it affect people in a positive way because you're a real positive person. I always love the T-shirt. Hopeful.
Yeah. Well, I think it's something in our world. You know, there's a lot of anxiety. Which is really fear, but we call it anxiety because it sounds nicer and it's more palatable when we have to medicate someone that's got anxiety. It's actually fear. So it's like we aren't made to live in fear. And I think some of the contributors to that is a lack of hope, where people get lost in this depressive thing. So, I love wearing stuff that sort of, it jogs my memory and then it sort of can challenge stuff because I should be hopeful.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And so growing up, your dad was a pastor.
Yes.
Has that sort of affected your hopefulness and your life in that regard? So obviously, what's it like growing up with a dad as a pastor?
Yeah, I mean, some people have had negative experiences. I've got mates that were PKs, we call them pastors' kids,
right.
And they had a negative experience because it was out of balance, like especially in the 80s. There was a fair bit going on. So some pastors went down the track of, I'm just going to give it all for the church and God will look after the family. Yeah. When in reality, your family is your first calling. So if you're a Christian, that's your most important thing that's your first port of call that you've been given to look after and to shepherd, so to speak.
Sure.
So some pastors, and I think it's just men and women in particular, it's like we gravitate to where we get celebrated. And if we don't really know how to do something, instead of trying to find out how to, we go and back to the thing that we can do well. So it's not just
Just
it's not just church.
into it.
I think in the 80s, there's a lot of businessmen and women that just kept going to work instead of being at home trying to deal with their spouse or deal with their kids and what have you. So dad was the opposite of that. Dad was the opposite. So it was like, I still remember sitting on the floor in the lounge room in Bicasia up in North Queensland. There'd been some massive shifts and there was issues and whatever.
Where's Bicasia?
In Mackay, North Queensland.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's the beaches, the northern beaches of Mackay.
Oh, right.
So they're nice area.
The Paris end.
That's right. People still wear barefoot. It's fantastic. Like you go to the local shop, it's still just chill.
Like that, is it?
Yeah, it's amazing.
Nice,
it's just that little bit out of town.
Yeah, cool.
So that's where I grew up. But I remember sitting in the the bedroom with mum and dad and my two brothers, and dad saying, "Okay, this is us as a family. This is what we have the choice for. We've been offered this down in Brisbane to do this, or we stay here. If we stay here, we're taking on a church that." At that stage, the previous person, a heap of different things had gone wrong and had left it in a heap of debt. We take this on with a heap of burnt, broken people and we push through, or we go down here where we've been offered this, but it's a family decision. And all of us going, yeah, okay, we're locking in, Dad, we're here. And that I would have been like 10 maybe.
Yeah, right.
So it's like, but that was a family decision because I think the challenge in anything, especially now with men and women in business and what have you, is it's like, it becomes it's all about Ryan and it's Ryan's business and I'm doing this for the family and they should just jump in behind and it's all, when in reality, you're a family. So if wifey isn't on board or your spouse isn't on board for where it's going and it's gotten really hard, you don't just cut the ropes and go, well, you're a heavy anchor. I'm going to keep pushing forward. You go, well, I need to dial back because my first responsibility is to my family, not to my business. But that's another whole, that's like, where's your identity? So dad was good in that side of it. Mum was very, very defensive of us. I still remember being in church once and we were mucking around, me and two of my best mates, I think in the second row or first row, as you do as a young teenager, making jokes while music's on and whatever. And one of the guys in the church came to Mum and said, your child is messing up as a pastor's kid, he should be doing, and she tore him a new one because it's like, you don't tell me, they're just kids.
Yeah,
I'll address my kids.
That's right.
But you don't get to say because they're this, they're at a higher thing.
That's right.
They're just the kids in this.
Yeah, that's
so
right.
we were pretty protected, I suppose, in that regard. Like we weren't.
It sounds like it was done right.
Yeah,
honestly, it just sounds like it was done right.
Yeah, there was a good, steady.
And you came out like you haven't had any, I guess, I mean, I'm sure you've had times where, I don't know, have you had your faith tested? Have you ever gone off the rails or thought, this is not for me? Or have you stayed pretty?
I've been pretty good. As in, I think life has enough things to sort of help you question stuff and not everything goes to plan at times and what have you. I've seen too much and experienced too much in myself with God and different moments and what have you to go, okay, because my current experience doesn't match the truth, I can't just go, well, I want to change my whole worldview because my current facts don't align with the truth. And I think that's one of the challenges of Christendom as a whole is to actually, we're taking the facts and we're appropriating them until they align with the truth.
What do you mean? Give me an example of that.
Say people that struggle with fear.
Right.
The facts might be you've got a fear or anxiety that's hindering or crippling you in a certain area, whether it's, and it might have come from, a valid thing, someone died close to you or someone took advantage of you or, broke that trust.
Yeah,
so there's
real.
a fear. It's a real fear.
Real.
But the truth is, the Bible says that he's not given you a spirit of fear, but of love, power, and a sound mind. And the love is, God is love, so that love is perfect love, which it says that perfect love drives out all fear. So that's one part. So if there's fear, it's things. So, and then a sound mind.
There's a conflict of the ideas.
It's like, okay, well, hang on. I've got fear. And there's a natural fear. If a bear came in this room right now.
Yep.
There's a reverence. Okay, you're more trained than I am. Yeah,
but I know what to do.
Me, I would
respond. You would react.
Yes, that's right. I'd probably need new pants. But it's like there's a reverence fear, and then there's a crippling, unrealistic fear, and that's most of what we get caught up in. Is this what if? instead of going, what if it went well, we go, what if it goes bad again? And so we start to protect ourselves, which is cool.
Yeah.
But if you come from, say, a broken family or you've had a broken relationship and you step into the next relationship with that fear, how do you show love? Because you've got to hold back because you're protecting yourself. So it's like they might take advantage of me again, or they might hurt me, or they might. So until that perfect love starts to overwhelm you and releases you of that fear, you can't love effectively. And then it talks about love and then a sound mind. So it's like to actually identify and go, well, is this valid? Is there a bear here?
Yeah.
If the bear's here, then that's valid. If there's no bear here, why am I scared of a bear being in the – so sort of having that sound mind to work through it and then the power to actually overcome. So he doesn't just go, oh, you shouldn't be scared. He equips you with that side of it and brings healing, brings that sort of stuff. So it's like that's probably I suppose, the longer answer to that side.
I hear
of
what you're saying. And so I guess, you know, if you were a priest or a pastor and you were raising a family, I guess you'd be proud or feeling like you were successful at it if your children have stayed in and continued to work. You work in the church now, do you?
We call it, I don't understand the label, but it's called a lay pastor, which means I jokingly say it's just doing whatever the paid pastor doesn't want to do, but it's like, no offense, Chris. But it's like I just help wherever I can.
Helper, side pastor.
Yeah, so I'll speak at times. I run the men's stuff.
But you're still involved. You're still passionate about it. You're still a man of faith, and you know, and I think that's shown that you've had a good experience with it. I mean, a lot of the people who would walk away have obviously had, you know, different experiences with it. And I think, you know, your father, by doing it the way he did, kept you sort of thinking, this is actually, I can have a good life like this, you know, because ultimately I think people just want to have a good life. And if they can't see how they can do it, they'll move on, you know?
Yeah. And it's got to be careful. I mean, there's a difference, I think, between religion and relationship. And we see a lot of religions, and a lot of religions have started wars. A lot of religions have done this and that and blah, blah, blah. The difference or the differentiator that is the basis of Christendom is it's actually relationship with God.
Right.
And so it's like if I like Sean, then certain things that you want and what have you, I will adjust my behavior because I want to be in relationship with Sean. Religion is the opposite of that. It's like you got to do or tick all these boxes or you don't get. And it's one of those. I had a guy talk about it. It's like, the difference between religion and relationship is I crash my car. Religion says, I can't call dad. He's going to kick my ass. Relationship is I got to call dad.
Yeah.
So it's that
and
difference.
So what is the denomination then?
Christian, I suppose. So C3 is the actual
So they
covering.
Are they different
Pentecostal.
churches? Right, okay.
Yeah.
So but is it a different I don't know. So like is it a different way of thinking to the other groups?
Because I think because we're human, our innate nature is to try and put in boxes.
Yeah.
And so any Pentecostal, traditional Catholic, Anglican, whatever, Uniting, whatever, there's an aspect of our human side that tries to go, like any religion, even outside of Christendom, is all about what Ryan has to do to get salvation. Whereas foundation of Christianity is it's what Jesus did that set it up for you. So you can't do more to get saved. You can now, from that point of salvation, follow different stuff and have a better life. But your thing to be saved, you are so far gone, there's nothing to match up with a perfect God. Hence, Jesus had to die on the cross in your place. So salvation has already been paid for. Full stop, bang, done. If you did nothing else in your life and you just accepted that and you weren't able to shift and change, that's it, because it's not about what you can do in your works. It's what he's done already. I think the moment we start to shift back to works, we're starting to step into like a religious setting, and that's a danger.
Yeah, I get you. Okay. And how have you found that that's, I guess, affected your – I mean, it's funny. No, I met you in a car rally, right? So and with the ultimate number plate, I got to say, AMGESUS.
Yeah.
Is that almost blasphemy? Come on, man.
No, because I think if you know him, if you look at everything that God's done, he's got his own sense of humor. Like, who creates a giraffe?
Yes.
Like, what's that
true.
about? You know, like any of that sort of stuff. I just saw those plates and
they're so good.
I was like, I want them. I figure if he came back tomorrow, Sean, he'd want a 4-seater.
He'd think it was
a couple
funny.
of the crew, get into it.
Cool.
The other side of those plates though, because it's AMGESUS, on an AMG. But I've had other guys who obviously, I don't know, their headspace is in a different realm, which has a totally different perception.
Yeah.
Is they go AMG sus.
Ah, right.
So it's like, so all of a sudden it goes from being,
to super creepy.
Yeah, to this is like a gangster car. Like, is this guy a drug dealer or is he?
Yeah.
So I didn't expect that one.
I loved it. I thought it was great. And I guess aside from this side of your life, this church side of your life, I mean, it's pretty much your main interests are, like business, cars,
cycling. I like cycling.
Yeah. And you keep fit.
I try to.
I saw you in the gym a few times.
Yeah, we hurt myself in the gym too.
Did you?
Yeah, still recovering.
The shoulder, right?
But yeah, I try. It's something that I think when I was younger, I probably took for granted, as most of us. And now I'm at that stage where I'm trying to just keep the body together.
Sticky tape works.
Yeah, sticky tape works. A bit of gaffer. Actually, we went through that stage a few years ago where everyone was wearing that weird tape.
What's that in cycling?
No, just all the exercise stuff they put on the tape to hold the muscle.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Until they realized, anyway. But yeah, exercise, I think until this year. So I'm 46 now. Early this year would be the first time I've actually been disciplined in my bed. Like my sleep cycle.
Oh, okay.
The different.
We can't get
again.
into
That's
bed
sus.
discipline in this podcast.
Yeah. So it's just been interesting to go. Okay, previous to probably 5 years ago.
Do you use that sleep timer app?
I do. Yeah, I got an
amazing
app on there, and it blows my mind.
Is
but
it
I've
this
had
one?
that for like 9 years.
Is it that one?
Yes.
That's
sleep
the best,
cycle. It's amazing.
App.
Yeah.
It's the best app I've ever come across.
9 or 10 years worth of data.
Yeah.
Until probably 5 years ago, if you asked me, I never get tired. It's all a state of mind.
Yeah.
Now I'm realizing that was just stupid.
Yeah.
And your body needs certain stuff. So this year's been amazing for me because for the first time in my life, I'm waking up like this week. Now it's summer. It's easier, but 4:45. I went through so long where it was hard for me to get up at 7. And you could.
So what's been the difference there? Did I miss that?
I think I just came to that conclusion. I need to be more disciplined in certain areas,
right?
Because it's real. If you're tired, you don't function
Sleep
well.
is just, and that app has to be the best app. Have you had it for 10 years? Did you say?
Yeah.
Well, I don't know, but we've got pretty much everyone in the office is on it, and my wife's on it, and kids are on it, and it is just a game changer. Yeah,
I've only had it like 3 times.
Yeah, I've had 100%.
Wow.
We've got a guy in the office who gets 100% pretty much every day. Yeah.
He's got to be just putting it in another room.
No,
surely.
It's just, and that's the thing. Like it works out the moon phase. It works out if you actually, I don't know if you've ever done any different diets, but I did keto for a while as well, and I found with keto and sticking to the not eating anything after 8 and not having any water, then that. What keto does is really stops the need to pee in the middle of the night.
Yeah, so you sleep
better.
And
so your insulin processing and all that is way down. And I'll send you some info on it. But what I found while I had that, the sleep is just 1,000 times better. Low sugar. I mean,
isn't that interesting?
And there's a lot of people that will, this is not an ad for keto diet. For me, it's been the best diet I've ever done.
Yep.
And it's been the easiest to stick to, the most enjoyable, the least sacrificial in the sense that I never felt like I was missing out because you can eat whatever you want pretty much.
Yeah, wow.
Well, you can eat a lot of what you want.
Yes.
You're never hungry.
Yeah, okay.
You just can't eat processed food basically.
Yeah. I will look into it.
Yeah, and so I found great success. I also found instant results. Like you get on it today and by the end of the week you're going, oh, wow, that's weight's coming off and I'm sleeping better. And so, I know there's people listening to this that'll just go, fuck that diet and carnivore diet and this diet and that diet. But for me, it works. And if it's done right, which is inclusive of buying the little keto sticks, which are these little, you wee on them and it tells you when your body's in ketosis.
Yeah, wow.
Because I find a lot of people do it.
But they're not checking.
But they're not putting their body into ketosis, which is the key. So you need to do the fasting. Otherwise, you're just kind of, eating a really low carb diet, which is great too. But if you really want to put your body in a ketosis where it starts flushing out when it starts using certain cells as energy, which kind of clears out your kidneys and your liver and all that.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of evidence to suggest also that, because the reason I got into it was because my dad is getting Alzheimer's.
Yeah.
And I knew that Alzheimer's was originally called type 3 diabetes, but they pharma and shifted it. They didn't want you sort of analysing what you eat too much, right? Mm-hmm. So they renamed it, or there's a bit of history there anyway. Don't quote me on this. I'm no expert, but it's basically type 3 diabetes, which means it's an insulin-related issue.
Yeah.
And if you look at Alzheimer's and dementia, it's sort of this uncurable thing. Yet there's a lot of sort of studies out there suggesting that handling the insulin in the brain and reducing to a keto diet actually helps. So, of course, my father dealing with this, I started looking into it a lot more and started trying it out for myself and all that. And I got the glucose monitor, that diabetics have, which now you can buy over the counter. Like they sell them. They sell them online, but you just stick it and you just swipe your phone over it. Have you seen those?
I've only probably seen.
You would have seen diabetics with the little white circle stuck on their arm.
Yeah,
that's what that is. So you just swipe your phone over and it brings you instant glucose reading. And I started checking all this stuff out. And as I said, if you can't measure it, you can't fix it. And so being a stats guy, I just wanted to run all that. And although I've been a little bit loose on it in the last sort of 3 months because of the rally and traveling and, it's hard to...
messed up a few of my diets that week.
Yeah, exactly. But it's a hell of a... informative diet. Like even if you don't do it, I think it's worth doing just so you'll learn some stuff about your body, I reckon.
Yeah, wow.
I really recommend it, for a lot of health issues as well. I don't know how we got onto that, but that's what I've found to be successful and looking at, because we're the same age pretty much. What month are you born?
July.
Yeah, I'm Feb. So
okay, so you're old.
You're 78.
I can
took
tell.
my number.
What's it like?
Yeah.
Oh, that's right. I did take your number. Sorry.
Yeah, it gets better. Trust me.
Oh, good.
Yeah,
that's what
3 months, 4 months from now, you'll feel a lot better.
I feel great.
Yeah. So yeah, man. What else? Tell us what's the deal with the business then? So you're this business that you're trying to do. What's it called? Does it have a name?
So Concord Teams.
Concord Teams, right? So with Concord Teams and your labour hire business, is your goal to get out of the labour hire business?
I don't think so. I think a lot of people seem to look at, I don't know, divide, conquer, move on. I've been in it, I suppose, like we built it when I started with Dan years ago.
Is Dan church guy as well?
Yeah, he is now.
I was going to say, if you spend that much time with someone, you got to have something in common that,
He's got a totally different journey to me. Different, more colourful. You'd probably get a great conversation out of him as well. But yeah, I can't even remember what I was going to say now because I was thinking of all these stories.
Yeah, sure. Now, just with splitting the businesses, I mean, you're taking on another sort of role here.
Yeah. I got a good team in Mackay now. So we got a great ops manager and team in there. So that has been a shift because if you'd asked me 5 years ago, and we're 9 years on the 1st of December of having the business of DGS, so the labour side, if you'd asked me 5 years ago, I'd go, I'm a CEO.
Yeah.
And then even probably 3 years ago, I'm a CEO. I had no idea what a CEO is really. I owned a business. I still don't think I'm great as a CEO, but I've taken steps to make it so that it can run. And my picture in my head has become, this is what I see a CEO as, someone that doesn't have to be in the business. The business runs autonomously of them and they just feed in where it's needed. They add strength there, or they bring guidance here, or they put vision over there. But a good CEO should be able to walk into any business and have it run within 6 months without them. That's my thought pattern. And that challenged me because I was like, I'm actually still just a business owner.
Yeah.
There's a big difference. And so we've been walking slowly towards that, which I found interesting. It was a lot easier to expand and grow the business when it was Dan's money.
Yeah.
And his risk.
Yeah. We should buy this. We should get everyone new cars.
Let's set up an office over there. Let's do this.
Yeah.
So it's been interesting to recognize once it's yours and it's you're on the chopping block, not someone else. It's a slower process.
And is that what brought you from Bicasia?
Yeah, we were moving before we bought the business. So we just felt like our season was done in Mackay.
Right.
So that's my hometown.
Yeah.
We spent probably 5 years out of Mackay between 95 and 2000, and then moved back in 2000, just the year that my first boy was being born. So it was like we'd been there for a long season. We were finishing with down under, looking at options, really in that stage of going, what do we do next?
Is Down Under the church?
No, the business. Yeah, sorry, the business side. So we were like, I was just working for Dan,
right, and
finished up, and I was like, we'll just move. And we looked at Townsville. My son was doing NPL soccer at the time, and the people that were dealing with were like, I mean, Mackay's great, but you need to be in Brisbane if you want him to be able to go to the next. So there was just a heap of contributing things, and I was doing my successful coaching business of $20,000 $20,000. One of the challenges we found was a lot of my clients were Brisbane, Sydney, Canberra.
Sure.
To get from Mackay, you lose a day on either side. So one day's engagement actually costs you 3. So I was like, well, that'll be better. These were all the things that were going through my head. And we just felt peace on it. One of the things we've learned in my life is always there's a scripture which says to be found in peace on the day. And I weigh up all of my decisions. I basically go to, well, something might look great on paper, but there's just, people will say, oh, it's intuition or whatever. Wifey and I have always just sat down and went, what are we feeling? And it's like, no, well, we're not getting to go there. We went to Townsville, basically sat in a setting there for about 6 weeks. Went, nah, which thank God I don't like Townsville. No offense, Townsville people. It's too hot. And then it was just like everything sort of flowed towards that, and we went, well, let's go for it. And then whilst we were looking, we were booking Mike into MPL teams to get checked out. We'd come down to Brisbane to do a trial at a couple of the teams. I'm looking around, and while I was here was when I had the phone call from Dan to help him sell his business. So it was like that was late October. By 1st of December, I was sitting at the desk.
Yeah, great. And so having gone through all this, and you're running a successful business, and you're a bit of an entrepreneur really in the sense that, starting new businesses and all, because you've now owned a business, but you also started one. I guess one of the things I was going to ask you about was like, what advice, I know it's a cliche of a question, but like what advice do you give to young people? Because one of the things that I find with the guys that I work with here, everyone's so in a hurry. Everyone doesn't realize that, you got to in my opinion, you've got to lay down some time doing something and becoming an expert at something. And, most of us don't have dads that, have something to pass on, or they have you grew up. So you even with the church stuff, like you grew up learning about, you would have learned so much more than just the church stuff, right? You would have learned about how
Dad
people
had a plumbing business as well at the start, and he did that himself. And then,
but there would have been administration of the church. There would have been facts. There would have been how many people attended. There would have been lots of things that you could transferable skills. And when you've got a parent that works, say, an office job, let's say, you're not going to pick up anything like that. And if you get out into the workforce at 23, 24 after doing some good times at uni and learning a lot of things there, won't get into that discussion, then, you're coming out 22, 23, and then the other thing is you're generally hooked up with a partner, you're generally living out of home. I told my son the other day, you earned $300, and I said, you got more disposable income than most other people right now, right? Like you're one of the richest people in the country, because after expenses, a lot of people don't end up with $300 left over at the end of the week. You do.
Yes. Yeah, that's right.
So, but what I was getting to there is that everyone's in such a hurry, and they've got such a boot on their neck trying to, produce, because the pressures are there. They've got and so that to get ahead, they need to earn more income. What do you say to these people, or what's your sort of take on that? Not necessarily advice if you don't want to be like an oracle, but just say like, what are your thoughts around that?
Yeah, I think it's more of a challenge these days with this, the
black box.
The black box, because there's so much ability for comparison. And
at AMGESUS on Insta.
Yeah, AMGESUS _ So the pressure is quite intense because people are seeing that one or less than 1%er that's made it big doing something that 10 years ago was a non-existent genre, and they're making millions. And so everyone feels like, oh.
You're talking about OnlyFans now?
No, that's right. I need to do my feet on the OnlyFans. That would be good too. That is one of them. And then just, I suppose, in everything, like TikTok accounts and all that sort of stuff that we're paying big. Once the machine's running, they dial back on what they pay. But that still leaves everyone chasing these rainbows. The get rich quick schemes.
And also a lot of them are fake. I mean, a lot of people are full of shit. I mean, I hang out with a lot of wealthy people. I'll do that, and there's always that group in there that, if you scratch the surface a little bit, and also your definition of wealthy might not be theirs, So to some people, being able to fill your car up without looking at the Bowser is, a big deal, whereas then there's other people who, not sure which plane they're taking. So there's levels, and I think with the TikTok thing, we also have this group of people that are well aware that no one understands the differences and, and so there's a lot of smoke and mirrors going on.
Yeah. And I mean, I've got a couple of young guys that meet with me, like they engage me, which is great because I've always been that thing of like, if you want to be like someone, you find the people that are doing it.
Yeah.
And so I suppose they're listening in that side of it because it's like it's no good going to the pub and hanging out with all the people that are not in a successful relationship and talking to them about your spouse.
Yeah.
Doesn't make sense.
Might make you feel better.
It might make you feel because they'll tell you, they'll reassure you and destroy your marriage.
Yeah,
so it's like that sort of stuff. I talk to guys and I go like, because when I got the car, previous to AMG, I had a WRX STI 2016, brand new. Everything, the Cobb exhaust, the NVIDIA exhaust, the Cobb tune, all this
amazing,
stuff. Beautiful car.
Yeah.
And it was amazing in that for me, it's just a car. I like it. My current car, I love the car. I love the shape. I love the. I could be in my Amarok Ute that I'm in now, just as much. Like it doesn't shape me. It's not my identity. Whereas I talk to young people and they have the issue of getting so caught up in the show because they're chasing an identity, and I think it's deeper than it's like if a young person hasn't fixed, like Jenny and I, when we hit 25 years, so we're 26 and a bit now. January is 27 years married. At 25, we're like, flip, how did we get here? Like, what? How have we made it when so many people haven't? And we did up a list of different what we think's contributed to us being able to get through stuff and get through tough times and still look each other and love each other and that sort of stuff. The top contributor both to the success and the potential breakdown was the same thing in that if I don't fix me, it impacts everything. And the amount of people when I do the business coaching and sit with different business owners and what have you, that their motives are so broken. And it's like anything. If your foundations are crappy, like if we sit in this amazing facility now, and it could be the most beautiful, all the structures, all the settings, everything to make it strong, standing up is amazing, but the foundations are crap. The first bit of rupture, this falls over. Doesn't matter how strong all this is because the foundations are terrible. And I find so many people, it's like out of a brokenness, they're like, I'm going to prove Dad wrong.
Yeah.
This person said, this person hurt me, so and their drivers are to find acknowledgement, to find significance, to find in what they're doing rather than actually being whole in themselves. And I feel like the amount of times that young people chase after that and they haven't fixed that and then they get 10 years into it and it's cost them their relationships or it's cost them their health or their mental health or their business again because you can't chase something from a brokenness. If I needed glasses to see and I smash the glass, I can put the glasses on. I could still be doing things for the right reason, but I'm looking through broken glass. So everything I see is through broken glass until I fix that. And that's the thing I encourage them to do is to take time out and go, okay, where are you broken? Like, do you know where you're hurt? What's the things that – because most people haven't taken the time to – and it's a scary thing to do. Don't get me wrong. Like I've driven out west when I was on the road all the time. You're doing 1,800, 2,000 Ks a week. You're driving from client to client, but it's a lot of hours just in the car by yourself.
Contemplating.
The scariest times for me were back in a time, now young people, you won't understand this, there was a time when you only had CDs and you didn't have reception, so you couldn't just play Spotify or music, and it would be quiet.
Yeah.
And I got stuck with my own thoughts.
Yeah.
And you start reminiscing and going over stuff and going, oh man, that actually...
Yeah, it's amazing, isn't it?
But until you've dealt with that stuff, there's a whole heap of things that come off that foundation that if you start building on that, it can't hold the structure that you're building. So I always encourage young people to get into that side of it, is fixing.
If someone's not religious, where do they go? You know?
Oh man, there's so many. I mean, that's the cool part.
Let's put that into practical
practicalities
terms. You know?
now.
You got some sort of kid there that's saying, you know, I want to. Because what I find, like I said, is I'm trying to keep young people motivated and also keeping them realizing that the path is that there's two paths. You know, there's the sort of you can maybe get lucky, or you can sort of, you know, follow a proven method, or you can kind of do a bit of both, where you try and follow a proven method, but also outside of that, you know, learn, educate yourself, buy some Bitcoin, buy some shares, you know, try out a few different things. So that's what I sort of think, you know. But there are those kind of people there that need some support, need some help, are a bit broken, need to take time to reflect and improve themselves.
Yeah.
Let's say they're anti-religious, anti-religion, anti-church, anti-everything, which is also another thing. I think they've got to be. You got to be open to information. Like, I'm not a religious guy. I love listening to what you're saying, you know, because I'm open. I like to think that I'm open to that, and I'm open to the viewpoint of how it could be. Yeah. And I'm also could be totally wrong. You know, I'm also open to that. Yeah. And I think that that's something that they struggle with, is where do they go? Yeah,
I think there's if we really want to, compared to say the early 2000s, it's more acceptable now to actually go, hey, I need help in this area. So there's plenty of community groups that do stuff. I still encourage people to stay in sporting arenas, because you get a brotherhood or a sisterhood if you're in that realm. It's like there's something that you have to adjust if you want to be successful in a team. You can't. It's not all about you. Yeah. So team sports are good in that regard because they force us.
Totally agree,
to adjust. It's individual sports, but a team sport, you have to work with people. So it's like that's a good way to just take the edges off some of your sharpness and that sort of thing. Then there's things, I suppose now is more acceptable with like psychologists, counselors, that sort of thing. My wife's done her master's in psychology. She's 6 working days away from being fully fledged psychologist.
Wow.
The amazing part in that side of it, even for me being a part of it, because every now and then she's not meant to analyze me, but I think that's what accepted her into the masters. Man. They met me and they're like, flip, she'll be able to write a great book. But it's that game of like all these things now are available to go, I'm going to go and talk to someone, even if it is just, and we say just a counselor, that's not the right word, but going and talk to, or which I encourage all the time, and it goes back to what I was saying before, get rid of your pride and find people in realms of areas that you want to succeed in and pay for their time.
You know, just on that, we talked about it yesterday in a podcast I did yesterday, in that you'd be surprised how many people will help you for free. Yep. Because people really love to help. And if you go to someone and say, you know, look, the problem is that you've got to be actually genuinely wanting help. And that's the other thing, right, is because a lot of people will help for a certain amount of time. If they don't see you actually doing what you're meant to do, you know, then they're just going to say, well, piss off, you know. But yeah, I think you'd be surprised. And I actually, a bit of my success in the earlier days was actually doing that. I didn't have any money to pay anyone for anything. And I just called people up. But I know what you mean.
Honouring. It's an honouring thing.
I think that what I'm trying to just
shouting at coffee.
Yeah. But if you are at a point in your life where, let's say your mental health is fine, your work is fine, everything's fine, but you want to go to that next level, call up someone. If you've got a spare couple of grand, call them up and say, hey, do you mind if I come and sit with you for an hour and I'll buy you an hour of your time for $500 and you could just help me and put me on track? Yeah, I think that you should be investing, you know?
And I should preface, I can't think of a time where I've actually had to make a big deposit. Because of like what you said, most people want to help. They do. Yeah. And so if they've got the time, if they don't have the time, they'll say no. Or if you don't gel with that person, they may not make the time. But I've been amazed at how many people
always want to help you out.
Yeah, just because I've been open and I'm genuinely going.
And you genuinely asking for help. How have you got to this point? Yeah.
And I think Dad sewed into that as one of the big things. I remember being at a conference once and Dad saying to me before I went into it, he goes, don't make my mistake. All these people that are there are just human.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, what do you mean? He goes, don't think, oh, that person's in that position, they're doing this thing, they're not going to want to talk. Just go and talk to them, go and ask them questions. And I remember being in a big contractors meeting in Mackay. I was still working for Dan, so I'm literally just I'm a dirt kicker, basically. We're in a room of nearly 300 contractors, and the head of BHP Australia was there. John Smith was his name at the time. He was the only guy in the whole room wearing a white shirt, button-up shirt. Everyone else was in orange. That taught me a second lesson. One, I'm never wearing an orange shirt to a group gathering or a chambray blue shirt, which everyone was wearing. I'm going to wear a white shirt because that's their talk for bosses. But when we did the social breakup, like as in they'd have a 30-minute catch, just go and talk to whoever. I'm sitting there watching from about 20 rows back, John Smith standing there on the corner by himself. And I went, I'm going to go and say hello. And everything in me and was scared as I'm like, what's he going to want to talk to me for? You know, blah, blah, blah. Started chat. That guy over the next couple of years, and he's moved on to different roles now and that sort of stuff. And I honestly haven't touched base with him for probably a decade. But responded to my emails. Gave me solid wisdom on certain things that I was talking to. By nature, I shouldn't have access to someone at that level. But because I just went, I'm just going to treat him as a human.
You'd be surprised. And I think what I try and tell, you know, what I say and what I try and tell people is don't ever envy anyone, you know? Like, because I just think that, you know, no matter what it looks like on the outside, you just don't know. And, you know, you can see there's so many examples. Oh my God. But there's so many examples, but you know, you think about, and I know people talk about practicing gratitude and all that sort of stuff, which I can understand that. I'm not someone who actively does it, but I also know that if you're feeling happy and you feel pretty good and you sleep well and you're actually comfortable, and that is worth so much. That is worth so much. And the guy who's got all this other stuff that you don't think you've got, he may not have the basic joy of just going to sleep at night and enjoying a good night's sleep, you know?
Well, it's what put me off wanting to move into business. I remember Dan, who we've talked about, I was always like, I'm going to be a millionaire one day, which isn't that a big thing these days, but back in 2000, that was a big thing. And I remember watching his life at the time. Now, there was a heap of contributing factors. We've seen the dog moving the stuff.
Out of here. He's all right.
There were a heap of contributing factors, but I remember at one stage, I'm watching his life and the toll it was taking on his health, the toll it was taking on his wife, the toll it was taking on his kids. And I'm like, I don't want this. And so for a while I shied totally away from the idea of business because what I'd viewed was so terrible, the cost. Everyone looked from the outside, all the people that weren't in his circle were like, oh, he's doing really well, he's got this. And I'm looking at the cost and I'm going, oh, I don't want that. What came out of that was like what you're saying, okay, how do I keep the basis? Like if I'm making a decision to do something in business, what's it going to cost me? You know, it says, Bible again, but it says a wise person, before they build a thing, they count the cost. And I'm like, most people will go, I want that picture. And they start climbing the mountain, not realizing it's Everest, but now they're in. So what? Pride won't let you come down. So you got to keep driving. You're seeing people die beside you. You're seeing all the stuff getting culled away, but you got to keep going. Instead of taking the time and going, you know what, Everest might not be me yet.
No, we've had clients where with the financial planning sort of business that you know, they need to sell that car. You know, they need to sell that Mercedes or they need to sell that. But the idea of that, they'd rather go without food before they let their friends see that they had, you know. And it's wild, you know, that pride that you talk about. That,
it gets us all.
It's wild, you know. But, you know, so it is very hard to and also that's where it's key to have good people around you, because if you've got people around you, they will respect you for having tried rather than having failed, you know what I mean? And I think that's a key as well, is that making sure that if you've got someone around you that is really going to make fun of you or give you grief because you didn't succeed at something, probably not someone, you know.
It's a bit of that Aussie thing. It's a bit dangerous. I think the cool part with that side of it is having the people that speak honest to you and keeping them in your world. A good mate of mine said it years ago. He was talking about deception. How people get lost in how do they get deceived and blah, blah, blah. And he said, I was at this conference and I'm like, oh yeah, put my hand up. Deception is dangerous because you don't know you're deceived. That's what makes it so powerful. And the speaker was like, no, you're wrong. And he's like, oh, because he was in a big room of people. He's like, oh, crap. And the guy goes, no, you know you're in deception the moment you stop listening to the voices you've put in your life.
Yeah.
And so many people go, I'm at this level now. Jimmy, who's always spoken in my life about family, he's never been to this level. I'm not going to listen to him anymore. Mum and dad, they never had a business this size. I'm not going to listen to them anymore. And we start to remove voices of wisdom from our world, and we start to live in this deception thinking I'm doing fine. The amount of times my wife has been a sounding board, because apparently I don't know I'm stressed most of the time. I think it can be a male trait I found with a lot of my mates. We're just fine. We're never stressed. And she'll go, yeah, you are.
Yeah.
No, I'm doing fine. But I've learnt to trust that and go, oh, maybe I am. And then when I pull back and stop, I am. So there's a safety in that side of it, of learning to be around people that are true, not like yes men or yes people that are always going, yeah, Sean, you're the best.
Yeah.
And then when it all goes to crap, they're not there. It's the people that are going to journey
people
with
who
you.
love you the most will tell you the harsh truths, you know, and I've had some harsh conversations, and, you know, and I'm proud of myself as well for being able to have those conversations with people as well, and be able to caringly say, look, you know, I really care about you, and this is not happening anymore. Like, we need to handle this situation, or, you know, you need to really, you know, observe what's happening in this thing. I'm sorry to be the one to bring it to you, but no one else is bringing it to you.
And that's
you know?
huge.
Yeah, it is.
That's not been a strong point in my world.
Yeah.
That was always something I've had to grow into, because I was too scared of upsetting the person, which is amazing. But it's like,
I think
I love that you've been doing that.
If you can do it from the right point of view, and as I said, it takes. The thing I've realised is that, I'll give you an example. I had a situation with someone that I'm close with, and you know, they weren't looking after themselves.
Yeah.
And I've mentioned it, you know, I've hinted at it 3 or 4 times, like most people would.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
And literally only 2 days ago, I just said, I'm done, like, with this bullshit. I'm going to just confront that person, sit them down and say, listen, this has been bubbling inside of me forever, and I'm the only one that's actually going to tell you, because I'm not, it's not that you don't know, and it's not that, you know, everyone's not thinking it, and you don't know everyone's not thinking it.
Yeah.
But I'm the one that's telling you that we're stopping it right now, and we are going to implement some stuff, and we're going to make a concerted effort together to fix this problem, you know, and we're getting serious about it, and I'm going to hound you about it, and we're going to work on it, and we're going to get results, you know, and and I think they were really appreciative of that, because the way I look at it is, I wouldn't let my kids, you know, if I care about this person in the same way I would treat my family, I wouldn't let it happen. So how can I really tell myself that I really am caring for people if I'm not willing to have those uncomfortable situations? And I was also willing to be told to fuck off.
Yeah. Yeah. It's
I'm prepared for that as well.
You're putting yourself out there. Yeah. But I think that's the power. It's like we have a lot of life coaches in today's day and age. We have a lot of leaders. We lack father figures. Now, and I know what parent figures, if we say that side of it. A father or a parent approaches a situation for a different outcome to what a coach does. So there's actually a care for the individual when you're a parent. When you're a coach, it's all about outcomes. And so it's interesting. It's like that thought pattern is actually a huge thing, because it lands different to a coach that's saying you need to do this so that your business does better and you've got a longevity. It's like, mate, I actually care about you. And if all this other stuff falls apart, so be it.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, look, it's documented. I went and saw Dave Goggins, as I said, and you know, like, one of his big things, and there's no shortage of evidence to suggest that, you know, the fatherless family is a real problem, right? Yeah. And, you know, the men with their roles in society, how misinformed they are, how misguided they are, how corrupted they are, exploited they are, like, you know, and of course you could say the same about women, but for today's arguments, we'll just stick on men because we're men and we understand that a bit better probably. But I can say that as a father, and my observation of dads is that the reason they're important is because they are really, if you look at a family unit, you've really got the mum and the dad are the only people that are really going to tell the kids the truth.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And then once the kids kind of get outside of the family, other people, like let's say you got a pretty daughter, which I do. And, you know, I will tell her the truth because I really want her to do well.
Yes.
And I have no other interest in her than her doing well.
Yeah.
But everyone else has some, like her friends, and you know, because she's pretty, might want to hang out with her. They might want to be, you know, they might want to go take her to a party so that they can be, you know, just have a hot girl group, you know, or she might be smart at school, so that there's people that might want to sit next to her, and you know, there's all these alter intentions.
Yes.
Then there's, you know, employees, school teachers. There's everyone wants a piece of you, even if you're not a pretty girl. But when you get out into the world, you're kind of like everyone's got a reason for having you around.
Yes. Yeah.
The parents, I really think that are there with and I think, you know, not to put more weight on the mother or the father, but together there's a balance that exists.
Oh, I agree. Yeah.
So if you've got just a mum, obviously there's a bit of an imbalance there. And if you've got just a father, there's a bit of an imbalance there. So I'm saying it can't be done, and there's always exceptions to the rule. But the problem I find is that we have only really our parents that are going to tell us what we need to hear. So the way I treated this friend of mine that I said she was a young girl, and the way I treated it was as though she was
your daughter,
my daughter, you know, in the sense that I just wanted to say, look, I'm going to talk to you as though you were my kid, you know, and just tell you what I think. And I'm willing to be told to piss off.
Yeah.
But that's how I treat it, and we got a good outcome.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, most people, they don't believe in themselves. So even if they're facing an issue, they don't actually think they can get through it. So they build coping mechanisms, faces that they put forward to people, all that sort of stuff. And it probably, for me, it impacted me years ago watching The Biggest Loser, because I probably feigned towards, well, just stop putting food in your mouth.
Yeah.
How hard's that? Which is very, again, it's that thing that we talked about at the start, wisdom, understanding thing. And I remember it was, I don't know what week it was, must have been week 5 or something, and this rather very large, but she was always happy, always jovial, always the joker, seemed the most content with her weight, and she was morbidly obese. And I think it was Shannon at the time, if I'm remembering right.
The blonde girl?
No, the guy. Who was the guy? The blonde guy.
Oh, yeah, Shannon, sorry.
Yeah, it was Shannon. Yep. Broke through in week 5, like just rode her because she wanted to quit and blah, blah, blah. And then she broke. And it came out all the front that she had, that she's happy with herself. What it really was, she'd gone so far that she didn't believe anymore
that she could do
that she could get out.
Yeah.
So we all need someone. Doesn't matter how well presented you are, how you need people that are in your corner going, you know what, Sean, you can do this. And what you said to her, we're going to go through this, and I'm going to help you, and we're going to do it. Because most people have gotten to a point in certain areas, like men. They don't believe that they can stay faithful. They don't believe that they can keep a job, or they don't believe that they can learn more. And if no one's actually there to go, that's a lie, you're better than that. You actually have the ability to do that, to stand and to cover that, to move forward, to go over that hurdle, then they're lost in that self-belief and they just stay where they are. Hence the importance of going, okay, well, how do I help you? What can I do to step into your world?
The other thing is that there's 2 parts. One is that they start to think that they are some sort of unique, unsolvable puzzle.
Yeah. Yeah.
That like no one's ever, like, you don't understand. Like I am me, and I am this weird, I've got all these problems that you don't understand because you've never had these problems. And so they start to, the solution, like they must, I can only imagine, look around at other people and see other people doing well, or other people doing perceiving they're perceiving success, perceiving happiness, perceiving and thinking, but I do pretty much the same things as those people.
Yeah.
I must be some quirky, broken the mold mistake, you know? And they tell themselves that they are an unsolvable puzzle. And then the second thing that I find that they do is they have little to none when it comes, little to no experience with actually approaching something and I guess getting results. So
yeah.
So back to what I was saying about measuring things and So what I find is they don't have any scientific method, if you want to call it that, or any approach that they've worked to solve problems in the past. So they're devoid of any system. So then you've got this sort of I'm unsolvable, and then look, I failed at this, I failed at this, I failed at this, I failed at this, I failed at this.
Well, even if you take a step back to school in the last 20 years, you're rewarded for not performing. I think that's the hard smack in the face when they get into the real world is we've protected them so much from different things in the world that we've not prepared them for anything in the world.
It's terrible.
And that's where it starts to rock. And unfortunately in Australia, with all of our great economy, our great nation, all the things that we have on offer, all this amazing stuff, our biggest killer of young men and young women now under the age of 21, between that 16 and whatever it is suicide. The biggest killer of men between the 40s and whatever it is into the 50s isn't testicular cancer or any other cancer or any of that smoking or whatever. It's suicide, which says it gets to a point where people have lost belief in their value. They've lost belief that they can ever get through it and that they're going to overcome it. And so they think they make a permanent decision to not a permanent issue. And that's the part. It's like if I can help in that regard is taking guys, some people watching this even now have never been told you're more than enough. You have value. You will get through this. You're built stronger than that. They've never been told that. They've never heard those words from a figure that has input on their lives. Maybe they grew up in an abusive home or whatever was going on, or they had bad teachers or whatever, but they've never been told by someone you can do it.
And you must surround yourself with that positive self-talk, and that's what I loved about this David Goggins thing is just the message there is that there is strength beyond what you think there is,
Yes.
And even for myself, like having read his book, and I'm not a massive fanboy or anything, but it was wild.
You got the T-shirt though, eh?
Yeah, I got the T-shirt and I sleep under a David Goggins.
I've got a boat in the room. It's a little one, but I carry it. That's right.
But honestly, like it was a wake-up call for me as well, in the sense that not so much what I need to do for myself, but what I can do for others is to remind them of the strength that's in them.
Yeah.
And I really hope that we do sort of start, with things like with all these things we do have with internet, with all these mass media communication devices and platforms. I really hope that we get more and more of this message out there. And I think it is. I think there is a lot more positive stuff.
There's been a massive shift.
Yeah.
Like you look at all the stuff that's come out even in the last 15 years for men's mental health, stuff that was taboo that no one ever talked about. And now it's like mates for mates, all these things where you just like ask the question, how you going? And it's like all of that was taboo.
Yeah.
And not officially, but no one spoke about it because it was a sign of weakness or it was a sign of, are you struggling? Now it's more accepted.
I don't know what the stats are, but I don't know how that problem has been over the years, whether it's kind of, whether it was a huge problem 20 or 30 years ago and now it's actually just, I don't know. Yeah,
there's some interestingly scary statistics when you start to dig into it, because it's even for young girls, like so the young boys thing with suicide has been massive in Australia for decades. Like that's been however, it was probably about 13 years ago for the first time ever in Australia that it became the girls at that same age group. And we were looking at it at the time. A mate of mine does a lot of stuff in this area. He'd be good for this, actually, Glenn Gorian. He's one of the foremost communicators into youth and school-aged kids all around the thing. He's been doing it for 20 plus years.
Yeah.
Does a day of hope and all this sort of stuff and teaches people how to instill hope into their worlds and that side of it. But when we were doing that, whenever it was 14 years ago, these were relatively new. Like 3 or 4 years. And so men by nature, we struggle to communicate. You'd put on a men's event, it's hard to gather. Women, one just has to say, I'm going to the toilet, and the whole table leaves and they all go to talk and chat. By nature, they gather easier and they talk about their problems and they go through it. And they were saying, we have yet to see the full impact of this, because it was only whatever it was, 3 or 4 years into the phone, and that generation that had been on their phones, they're not talking as much as they used to. they're comparing themselves all the time. Stuff that men have been doing for donkey's years, all of a sudden the girls were doing. So it's just an interesting, whether it's a hard science.
Have you read a book called, have you heard of a book called Coddling of the American Mind?
Oh, no.
Yeah. It talks about that stuff. It talks about, the correlation between devices and, I won't bring up any data on it because I don't know it off the top of my head, but I'll flick it through to you. But it's interesting stuff, the effect that this stuff is having on it. But back to what you're saying before, man, is sports and, connection and real connection, man, it's so key. And I can't speak highly enough of sports and what that's done for my kids, I think it's just been the difference.
Yeah.
And I look at my daughter, best example is, when we arrived in Brisbane.
Yeah, because you only moved.
And she was 10.
Yeah, wow.
And I remember taking her to the basketball court and kind of like,
forcing her
at
out.
training and her just standing there and just going, and I'm just like, okay, we'll just watch, So we just sat there and we watched, And I've always been someone who tries to push my kids within their limit, but not break them,
Yeah.
Okay, and we stand there and we bounce a ball on the side ourselves and then I'll pass it to that girl, and eventually after – she went on the court and did training for about 5 minutes. And eventually she played a game after maybe 3 or 4 training sessions. She played a game and she ran out onto the court and she just was stood on the court just staring at me on the bench. And she's just like, I think she probably was just tears running down her face. I'm like, it's okay, it's okay. And everyone's going, why are you forcing your,
That's right.
I can't, if she doesn't want to play, don't make her play, And I'm like, I'm not making her play. I'm just... I'm putting her in tough spots, She's not going to get hurt.
And it's
She's
a safe, tough spot.
And it's safe, tough spot, yeah.
I think we've lost that a bit.
Yeah. Well, I can say, right, like on the weekends, my daughter plays 2 games of basketball. Yeah. On Tuesday night, she played with her mum. This is 6 years later. She coaches on a Saturday.
Yeah.
And, basketball is her thing.
Yeah.
She loves it. Yeah. Absolutely loves it. And it's given her confidence, given her physical confidence. It's kept her in shape because, if it wasn't for that, I don't know how her posture would be. Yes. I don't know how her physical fitness would be. She volunteers at the park run to take the label, because I do the park run. She's not up to running it, but she comes and takes the tags and stuff. Yeah. She's involved in community and she has met so many great people because of it.
Yes.
And I think that that's something that everyone should try and do. And the government, if the government wants to help people, make that something that they, promote that more.
Yeah.
There should be ads on TV all the time about how great sport is. Remember we used to have those Life Be In It ads and things? Put some money into encouraging people to do that sort of stuff. I don't think there's any real, they do have a great thing, which is I think everyone gets $200 or something towards their sports fees. Did you know that?
I don't.
Yeah, everyone in Queensland, everyone adults as well.
Oh, really?
You get like a voucher to play team sports. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
But I think they're the sorts of things that help communities.
And it's important. I think what we're going back to with the young people, even deciding to do something that you don't like, but committing to do it for a season.
Absolutely.
Because it's like you're saying with your daughter, I've had my son when he was younger.
He committed, all the fees.
He committed to do it and be 3. I don't want to do this anymore, crying. And
I got news for you, son.
Yeah, you made a commitment to your team.
Yeah.
So you're going to be there for this season.
Go there and cry. Yeah, don't cry here.
Yeah, you can stop next year. You can be out. But it teaches kids.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, we're too. They're upset. They don't want to do it. Kids don't know what they want to do.
Yeah.
They don't. That's why they're kids. We're the adults. So it's like,
and that's the whole point. Responsibility, commitment.
I see it as a boss.
Yeah.
The amount of people that I don't like my job anymore.
Yeah.
Oh, what are you going to do? I'm just quitting. Yeah. It's like, what? Hang on. You got responsibilities. You got debt. You got this. How about you find another job before you just, but because when they were young, no one.
But that's what you're seeing now. You're seeing that come through, like what you said before about the devices and, what you mentioned about, people who will leave a job because they're not motivated in a certain way, that's the truth of it. We've had people leave and go to lower paying jobs, and I believe we run a pretty slick operation. I think our work environment is one of the best. I think people here are just awesome, and but we've had people leave and go to like lower paying jobs just because the status was better, or because
get a label.
And the people around them are, just cooler people, or but it's less money. It's or you know, I just don't like working with that guy. He's younger than me and he makes more money than me, and I can't handle that.
Yes,
and he's my boss. So fuck that. I'm going over here. You know what I mean?
It comes back to that 25-year thing that wifey and I came.
Yeah,
my insecurities will actually rob me of a heap of stuff if I don't deal with it.
Yeah,
my issues and my hurt and my insecurities will shade actions of other people. And if you don't deal with that, it'll rob you of opportunity time and time again.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's good to stay in a job because longevity is rewarded.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think back to mine. I could have left mine when I was working for Dan.
Yeah, look what ended up.
And he'll watch this. Yeah. He's watched plenty of these things and I've spoken to him about it. We had good reason on plenty of times to actually leave.
Yeah.
But I'm staying, we're going to work through this.
Yeah.
And it plays itself out. So many people go, oh, my boss spoke to me meanly, and they leave and they go to the next job.
It's wild.
And then it's like, oh, they spoke, and they go to the next job and they wonder why 20 years down the track they've never progressed to anything. Well, they've never stayed long enough to progress.
Yeah. And eventually, like the value to the organization comes that your experience within that organization.
Yes.
Like when you move to jobs when you're in your 20s and 30s, you're actually a new, young, bright, energetic. When you're over 30, 35, 40, you're actually not. You're the experienced.
Yes.
You're the guy that's the guy that knows all the maneuvers and has all the connections and knows how things work. So if you're not bringing that,
what are you
not
bringing?
bringing that, then you're just going to end up, you know. So
anyway,
that's been a good chat, man. What have we done?
Appreciate it.
Nearly 2 hours.
Sheesh. You'll have to cut and shuffle a bit.
Not really. Nah, we'll leave most of it alone. Yeah, man, it's been good.
Yeah,
Did you enjoy that?
Yeah, appreciate it. It's been, I love, it's easy to talk. I have to dial back how much I talk, but it's good. You just go, let me just interject here.
Nah, I'm good at it. I'm good at it. I'm a talker, my brother, my whole family, my mum. If you don't cut us off, we'll keep going.
Oh, you did well.
Thanks.
I found myself going and you're like, I'll just say this. And, I'll just shut up now for a while.
Nah, that's good, man. Hey, nice to have you on.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks, man.
Enjoy.
Beautiful. Yeah, that was good, bro.